coming to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown on a beautiful Sunday. There are certainly other things you probably would prefer to be doing, but I am thrilled that you came to our fellowship for this important program. My name is Lynn Kaczynski. I'm president of the board here at this fellowship, and you may be wondering, okay, why would this type of religious community be holding a program like this? And for those of you who don't know much about Unitarian Universalism, we are a faith community that doesn't believe in the traditional credos and dogma, but we do have 7 principles that bind us, and there are 2 that I think are really important to stress today. The first of which is the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And there's a lot of information that's floating around out there regarding energy and choices and what do we do. So anytime we can help to educate or bring forward points of view, we find it very important. The second is, the second principle is the respect for the interdependent web of all existence for which we are a part of. It's this planet, right? Not only the interdependent web of us, but how we interact with our planet, what we're doing for our planet, and how we are protecting it for future generations. So having this type of program, having these 2 powerful women here is right up our alley. So glad that you could attend this. A few housekeeping announcements. For those, COVID is rising in this area, so those who feel comfortable, we do ask that you do wear masks. Afterwards, refreshments will be offered. It's outside. That's a mask-free zone. And just in case of emergency, for whatever reason, you can see the exits. There's lots of doors you can get out of here. If you go out these doors, watch that first step. We haven't gotten the ramps in yet, which is why they're out, but you can get out that way. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn it over to Trish Rooney, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our speakers in the program.
Nice to see you all here today. I'm very glad to see so many people interested in this topic. Go 100 PA, which is a legislative framework to give us pathways to reach adoption of 100% renewable energy in Pennsylvania by 2050. It sounds like a reach goal. The bill sets targets for state and local governments to reach. The process of turning ideas into action usually means you have to move some restrictions or impediments out of the way. And this bill makes a path to do that. If you have internalized this climate business, you undoubtedly know that this is something individuals cannot manage on their own. There are things we can do. Aim to eliminate waste in our lives, for instance. But we need government to set incentives and get everyone pulling in the same direction so that we don't have the unaware or the reluctant making off with our livelihoods and our future. The Patriot News yesterday printed an Associated Press article saying that the levels of carbon in the atmosphere now have not been seen for thousands of years. We know this is going to make a change in our lives and in our country and in the world. And I believe it is better to turn towards the changes that life brings rather than refuse to see them. If we can work together, we can accomplish a great deal. Pennsylvania is a leader in gas production. The Marcellus Shale Formation in western Pennsylvania is the largest source of natural gas in the United States. Events in Europe have led government and business to move with alacrity towards new natural gas production, rather than exploit opportunities to develop renewable energy at a faster pace. Pennsylvanians have to decide how much more gas production we are going to accept, and at what cost. Cost to humans and the environment, and opportunity cost for technologies not developed. Some of you in this room know a lot more about this than I do. I personally am coming to this from the Fair Districts PA campaign to Fix Harrisburg, a campaign which focuses on making the General Assembly more responsive to the needs of Pennsylvanians. Response to change and climate needs to be a conversation we are not yet having. Please allow me to introduce two speakers today, Senator Katie Muth and Senator Amanda Cappelletti, both prime sponsors of Go 100 PA, along with Representative Chris Rabb in the House. Senator Muth is currently senator in the district in which we speak today, District 44, the borders of which have recently changed to include a couple of towns and boroughs which resemble cities like Phoenixville, Parksville, Akron. As chair of the policy committee for the Senate Democratic Caucus, Senator Muth holds a key position in determining where Democratic senators will expend their energy. Senator Muth is also chair of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness. And she is a member of 4 other committees: Resources and Energy, Finance, Rules and Executive Nominations, and State Government. I want to stress the importance of each of these committees in making a difference in the lives of ordinary Pennsylvanians. These committees are linchpins to effective legislative function. Senator Muth has a finger on the pulse of the General Assembly. Probably no other leader in the Senate plays a greater role in connecting ordinary citizens with the process of legislating. Senator Cappelletti is a new hire in this state Senate. First elected in November 2020, Senator Cappelletti represents District 17, a district that remains relatively unchanged after redistricting in 2021. Her district includes Radnor and Haverford in Delaware County, and municipalities in Montgomery County like Upper and Lower Marion, King of Prussia, along with Norristown and East and West Norriton. It is a district of enormous contrasts, and she won with 65% of the vote. But Senator Cappelletti was born in Pottstown, and she graduated from Boyertown Area High School. So she belongs with us today.
You can claim me.
And we welcome her with open arms. She is an example of what the next generation can do for us as leaders on the issues we care about. Senator Cappelletti also serves on 5 committees. I'm in awe of what the workload is for these senators. And one of them is Community, Economic, and Recreational Development, which sounds like the committee where most legislators put their hopes and dreams. She also serves on Agriculture, Rural Affairs, Banking and Insurance, Health and Human Services, and the Judiciary, all critically important committees. And now I'm going to let them speak on preparing for climate change in our lives, what government can do and cannot do, and what government needs from us.
I was like, I do it one point. Thank you.
I'm a note taker even when I'm listening to other people in the intro of things. Thank you for having us, and thank you for joining us on a beautiful Sunday afternoon where Mother Nature is in a good mood, and to spend your time with us knowing all the other places you could be. And it genuinely means a lot to know that there are other people out in the world that care about this issue, and certainly as Senator Cappelletti and I head into a what's to be a turbulent budget month. This is a nice, motivating, friendly group of people to look at as we head to Harrisburg tomorrow. So thank you selfishly for giving us a little extra boost of good vibes. And, I want to start by laying the background of when I got into the General Assembly in 2018, I was newly elected, knowing that Pennsylvania has had an addiction to fossil fuels for decades, resulting in legacy pollution. I grew up in western Pennsylvania in Westmoreland County. If you don't know where that is, that's okay. It is now one of the many fracked counties in the West. My elementary school has a frack pad right next to it. Obviously wasn't there when I was there, but coal waste was there when I was there because my brother played Little League baseball, and next to one of the fields he played at is a giant heap that my mom would tell me I was not allowed to ride my bike on when everyone else was. She's a smart woman, and not knowing what exactly that big heap of ash was. And so that still sits there today. I asked my dad this weekend to double check before I was incorrectly citing that it was still in existence. And actually this Thursday, this past Thursday, the policy committee for our caucus had a hearing in Monroeville, and that's actually where I was born, in the hospital, but on the health harms of fracking relative to a recently released health white paper by the Environmental Health Project. And the goal was to get other legislators that may not be a champion on some of these green, sustainable energy efforts to be engaged. And I say that members meeting, I said it was a Senate Democratic policy hearing. So this is a bipartisan struggle in Harrisburg. So I want to make that clear that there are R's and all R's and some D's, a chunk of D's that certainly have not made the climate crisis a priority. And I am eternally grateful that we were able to help Senator Cappelletti get elected in 2020 because it has added some oomph to that mission. Because when you're the only one screaming about it, eventually you become the one that's just the crazy lady screaming about climate change. So now there's two crazy ladies screaming about climate change. Because we're hysterical and we've been called emotional and we've been ripped to shreds by the Marcellus Shale Coalition and the PA Manufacturing Association and all of these I call bro club entities, and that's just by, I guess, default. They're male dominated organizations. There might be a few women lobbyists here or there, but it is a very interesting culture to be a part of when you bring up basic common sense things like I don't want someone's neighborhood to be decimated in a tornado or a flood or die of cancer. We know that life happens in general, but if there are ways to prevent harm from attacking our constituents, why wouldn't we look into that? And so here we are with this national crisis that people have known about for decades, right? And I don't know if any of you have watched that Frontline documentary series on climate change. It's 3 parts. I really think you should. I listened to it as I drove to and from Monroeville. So I was horrified. That's why I couldn't see what was on the screen. But it really gave a historic landscape of government and their failure to take action. And it was the federal government, and how long industry has known about these harms and has actually researched climate change and what their industry has on that impact. And so I knew this about the health part since the 50s and 60s. The health harms of oil and gas operations have been well documented, well known, well covered up. And now you look at how many times the federal government, it goes through these 10-year waves of we're gonna get it's mostly around trying to get a carbon tax, which is one solution of many, right? I'm not saying I'm against it, but it is not the bee's knees end all be all to tackling the climate crisis. So Pennsylvania just recently enacted a carbon tax that's now being disputed in court. And carbon isn't the only thing that, it took me a long time to have this epiphany, and that might sound pathetic, but I was like, wait a minute, carbon, what about methane? Because carbon and methane aren't the same thing, and I was not good at chemistry. The good doctor's sitting here in the front, so don't judge me. But I did have a tutor, and I think I got a D, to be honest, maybe a C minus. But teacher was not very helpful. But but I do know the difference between carbon and methane, right? And so, and I'm thinking about what I've learned about leaking methane from all this gas and oil infrastructure, whether it's conventional natural gas, unconventional, which is called fracking. And Pennsylvania not only is one of the most polluting states and one of the most polluting spots on the whole earth, but for carbon, then layer in methane. And methane is actually more potent than carbon when it comes to climate change in the atmosphere. And it heats up much faster. And so when we talk, we hear this, I'm glad Patricia, you mentioned this unproven technology, because you're gonna hear, probably already have if you've read anything about carbon capture. My first committee hearing for the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee that I was put on in 2020 was about carbon capture. And I honestly didn't know a darn thing about it. So I read the material sent to us, I'm trying to understand it. I'm like, is this a real thing? I've never heard of it working. Like I'm Googling during the hearing, I asked informative questions. I was not a combative nut job woman. I was just trying to, I don't know what this is. What is it? Is it something that's helpful? And I eventually just texted someone from the National Resource and Defense Council who's very helpful. And I said, Mark, I'm conflicted. The research that we're given, Republican-controlled committee, and we have Consul Energy, one of the big coal operators out west, as a testifier, a farmer from Bradford County who's using a tax credit for some hydrogen method of capturing carbon. And I'm like, is this a real thing? And he said, for concrete plants, yes, capturing carbon is a legitimate technology, which we need concrete, right? We need that to build things. And he said, it's not proven for natural gas, and don't forget about methane. And that's when I had this epiphany. So when we hear about the next couple, and I bet you, I'm not a betting woman because I have student loan debt, but in this month of June, there's gonna be something, some little nugget of money, and I mean hundreds of millions probably, dollars for industry, again, tax credits. They're subsidized by all of us. Our tax dollars subsidize the energy, the fossil fuel companies that also then ultimately end up, we pay utility bills to, and you all see these rates hiking up and record profits for all these fossil fuel energy companies, and we're paying more to turn on the light switch, and there's no justice there for people, right? It's a corporate greed sham. And so then layer in all the health stuff. So when you talk about energy bills in the General Assembly, they're all cookie cutter for industry. There is no requirement under Pennsylvania law or regulation right now to take into account the cumulative impacts of any project or surrounding infrastructure. So for example, I don't know, many of you probably have obviously heard of the Mariner East pipeline, which was another learning curve for me because it's not in my backyard, but learning that it's not turning what's going through the pipe is not turning anyone's lights on, it's making plastics overseas. And how fracking is a part of that, right? It might be fracked out west or in the northeast, but it's transported, right, across, it needs to go to go out port at Marcus Hook. And we end up being part of the cradle to grave cycle. And you're gonna hear me say cradle to grave because I think we need to acknowledge there's waste in all forms of energy. Senator Jean Yaw, who is the majority chairman of the Senate Environmental Resources Committee, who has immense stock and investments in Halliburton and other fossil fuel companies, who runs all of his own bills out of his committee. This isn't my opinion, you could go fact check all this, it happens. That destroy the current little environmental regulations. That part is incredibly frustrating, knowing that someone is financially benefiting from this personally. He also has royalties and gas leases. And I think that that's part of the Fix Harrisburg solution is that that pay-to-play piece, that's legal. Whether we think it's ethical or not is a debate, but it's legal. And so those making the law that have the majority power, which is the Republicans, because they're in the majority. If the Democrats were in the majority, the rules could be created by Democrats. The rules in the Senate and the House are both created by majority parties, which means we can't run a bill like this out of committee because we can't run a bill out of committee. We might be the minority chair people of X committee, maybe if you have a good relationship with the majority chairperson, I'll let you know how this works out for me next week. I'm gonna see if I can get the National Guard minimum wage bill run out of my Veterans Affairs Committee. We'll see if Senator Stefano is a good, decent human, but to be continued. But there's nothing that in the rules that says, hey, our bills, we can't even get a hearing testifier. We can say, we'd like to have X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, the rules are made by the majority party, and they do not allow for us to participate, which means we can't fully participate on your behalf if we represent you. And that's part of this. So when we talk about introducing legislation for this energy transition, you're mocked, especially by the building trades and some other organizations, and even some of our colleagues. But everybody's like, start low, a compromise. And I understand there's a balance, right? And things can't happen overnight, etc. But this climate countdown to disaster is ticking faster than ever, right? We're at this pivotal moment that, like, if we don't take dramatic action, and if I were other states, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I would sue Pennsylvania for all of its emissions because you are exacerbating this crisis because of what we do here. And so Senator Cappelletti and I'm glad she's here because last session she wasn't here yet. I was flying solo on this issue. And there were versions of this bill, but not at 100%. So it was like, oh, in 30 years we'll be at 50%. And it's like, I get it. I get this isn't necessarily the easiest thing, but it's the most important thing. But that's not really up to us, unfortunately, right? Mother Nature and what we've already done has told us, the data shows us, here's the amount of time. The damage has already been started. So now it's damage control. And when we have a legislature that genuinely, I don't even know, you can chime in if it's just they don't believe it, or they don't care, or they're not gonna be on the planet for when it happens. I'm conflicted on the thought. Go ahead.
I genuinely believe it is a lack of long-term planning. People want immediate resolutions, they want immediate gratification, and this bill doesn't give you immediate gratification. This bill is literally what we should be doing all of the time, thinking in the long term, preparing for the long term. One of our Republican colleagues actually mocked me on the floor of the Senate because I begged for them to extend a resolution for FEMA aid after Ida for my constituents who were all flooded out and put into homes or in tents, along the river where they got flooded out from. And they mocked me saying, somebody stood up here and begged for us to do, well, now I'm telling you, I need you to vote for my constituents because of a coal-fired plant against the carbon capture tax. I was ready, that was the thing. And I was not happy about it because he's not thinking long-term. He admitted on the floor of the Senate that coal's going away, but don't make it go away any faster. But you're also not doing anything to prepare so your constituents don't fall off the cliff and that they just end up without a job and on unemployment. That's what this legislation does. It prepares. It might move along the closure of those plants faster too, but it prepares people so that they don't just end up on unemployment. They have a future and a way to continue to take care of their family and an economy to work in.
And the other piece is that our bill does not mandate anything. There's no ban fracking, there's no ban coal, there's no you must close in 2 years. The General Assembly doesn't yield that authority constitutionally to shut down a sector of business. I just want us to be mindful of the games that are played of the fossil fuel industry with LLCs and pass-through companies, and look at coal. The reason I could have rode my bike on a mountain of coal waste is because coal wasn't required to clean up after itself when it got out of town. And so when you think about that, you think about the 13,000 plus gas wells right now in Pennsylvania, the bonding requirements for those wells is so well below the actual dollar amount that it'll take to plug and cap those wells appropriately. We, the people, are already gonna foot that bill unless there's some miracle from above that the Environmental Quality Board is reevaluating those fees for bonding. The moment I tried to amend a bill, Senator Jean Yaw had a bill to bond solar and hydro, and wind, all three. And the bonding amounts, So I'm like, you know what, that's, okay, let's look into this. So we emailed the Department of Environmental Protections, or so called, and said, hey, what is the process of putting in a solar plant? Like, what are the risks that you would calculate into bonding? Do you know that they replied and said, we don't even permit solar farms? That's how low risk. And so you think like,
They're pretty safe.
so you're like, so they don't even need a permit, but the amounts that Gene Yaw had proposed, it was to make it so financially impossible to expand. So you're basically blacklisting renewables via a bond fee that really, I mean, you should put it to gas and oil, but who am I, right? And so that's a mechanism to enshrine the gas and oil industry into Pennsylvania's operations for, what, another 20 years? And so, go ahead.
I just want to jump in and make one additional point to this. They tell you that they care about jobs and they want their, in the economy. But if we're enshrining the gas and oil industry like this into our legislation and into our lives here in Pennsylvania, guess what? You don't care about the economy, because the renewable energy sector has a significant number more jobs in Pennsylvania than the oil, gas, and coal industry combined.
And it's the most emerging sector for job creation and development. So we sit here waiting, not just to save the burning earth, as if that wasn't enough to do it for you, right? And then it's like, here's this economic opportunity that is just flushed down the toilet for less than 30,000 jobs a year. Most of which are from out of state, may I add. And you will hear building trades unions that will say, we have these jobs, they do, and they're high-paying jobs. They are six-figure jobs sometimes for these, crane operators, specialized skills that you need on a frac pad versus just some general operator, rigging person and not that they don't work hard, but that they come up from Texas. Every single hotel I've ever stayed at, including the one in Monroeville on Wednesday night, have Texas trucks. It's just quite remarkable. So Pennsylvania is really just an extension of Texas. We're not collecting tax on the gas that's fracked from Pennsylvania. So it's like the impact fees that go to each municipality don't pay for any of the harms. And then the jobs, they're not all in-state jobs, and there's 13-some million people live in Pennsylvania. So 30,000 jobs versus the 250K plus thousand jobs from an industry that's already happening, right? There are some projects, thank God, in parts of Pennsylvania that are renewable energy projects, mostly solar. But there's a wind project right now, a wind farm that's being blocked by the very own Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. So when I say this gets really murky and political, it's really ugly, and you need an 8-foot whiteboard, which I couldn't fit in my car. I did debate. I didn't know where I would put, if I had my giant Post-it pad where I could draw it out for you. But you see, it's follow the money, and there are a lot of people making money off of keeping Pennsylvania as is, including your state pension funds, are invested in fossil fuels so heavily. You all pay into these as taxpayers, and if you are a teacher, public school employee, a state worker, a municipal worker, you pay into this pension system that is invested heavily into hedge funds and everything in fossil fuels, midstream, all of it, cradle to grave. And I know that because I was appointed to the PSERS Public School Employee Retirement System Board, and as I'm sitting there going through these investment portfolios, which I'm completely new at, I have no investments, I told you I have student loan debt. So I'm like reading everything feverishly, and I'm like, my God, like their third highest investment is an energy transfer. This public pension fund, you're like, and this is a market that's tanking, that tanked that pension fund in 2020 by 24%. And now 100,000 teachers have to pay, and school employees have to pay more out of their paycheck for their pension. And so when you think about the cyclical interconnection of this, you really think like, how the heck can we be fighting about this at such a deep level? And that is just one of those things where we say, our bill just has this renewable energy task force, meaning there are people at the table that come together to develop a plan. This legislation doesn't dictate how, it says who needs to be there to develop the plan, which is fair. We also have the Just Transition Community Advisory Committee. Many of these communities that have had some level of local jobs, for example, I'll say in Dimock, Pennsylvania, where the Gasland and Gasland 2, if you haven't watched those two, documentaries, rewatch them. I rewatched them and cried and screamed and had my husband pause the TV 19 times so I could take pictures of the data and the facts on the screen, and I was screaming about Dick Cheney. But it kind of frames how these communities, that's a community since 2009, 10, as well as Washington County where the first practice well was drilled for fracking. This is 2022. There are people in these communities that do not have clean drinking water today because they had private wells that were decimated by methane migration. And so you think like, how the heck can these people, they're living like that. And some of them have died already. So when we say this is a local issue, whether or not you care about what happens to people in Northeast PA or in Washington County or in Westmoreland County or Greene County, what happens in their backyard, if it's allowed there, means it could happen in yours. So if there's a space that, hey, industry wants to dump their waste, they're allowed to dump radioactive fracking waste in landfills in Pennsylvania, and sewage treatment facilities in Pennsylvania. Over 140 of them take it now. And so when you think about that, and they discharge cleaned water, fracked water, into our rivers and common waterways of the Commonwealth, I don't know about you, I don't want a cup of radium in my drinking water. I don't want PFOS and PFOA in my water. This is happening all over Pennsylvania, and on top of the fact that we are an enabler of this burning earth. And so that Just Transition Committee is to talk about how these communities that have been impacted, what do they need to be made whole? Because they can't be left behind, and that goes into the job piece. If there's a workforce issue, these companies can declare bankruptcy and get out of Dodge with little to no notice. And so those jobs are down the toilet. And so we have right now no plan for that. There's no plan. If a coal plant closes, they're required to give it's like a warning system that is in place, but it is like a 90-day thing. That is not enough time for us to, and I'm not asking people in the fossil fuel industry to go learn how to put in a solar panel. That's not the goal. The goal is what do we need to do job retraining or continued education so that workers that have a skill in the fossil fuel industry can use their skill and gain new skills in another industry. That's called an evolving workforce. That's happening whether Marcellus Shale wants to admit it or not. That's a thing, right? We all may not be in the same exact job our entire life. There's things, we all should actually really want to learn and better ourselves throughout the time we have on this earth. But this has been a sticking point for them is this, they call the just transition the funeral. I'm not kidding. And at least some of the labor people have been honest enough to be like, hey, this lingo has a bad, stigma already. And I'm like, well, what do you want us to call it? Do you want to be unemployed, or what do you want to do here? Because the Republicans, unfortunately, have made that relationship with the few labor unions that are in this industry. But it's like they make Pennsylvania a right-to-work state tomorrow. And so here we are, and you will watch me go through it this year. We will be attacked for speaking out.
For people who don't know, right to work state, they call it a right to work, but really what it does is it completely destroys people's ability to unionize and for the government's ability, fair wage, our government's ability to interact and work with unions and get union contracts for a variety of projects. So right to work really is a misnomer of the whole thing. So
they're very good at using those key phrases. It's just like GENIA's bills are like, clean up the streams, and in the language of the bill, it's like, we're just gonna dump more stuff in the streams and they don't have to report it. I mean, again, requires a lot of breathing. But again, this also then has the Renewable Energy Center of Excellence, which are members of systems of higher education and sponsoring research. Obviously barriers preventing access to renewable energy, community outreach, clean renewable energy technologies, effective practices for renewable energy. So this legislation simply is the framework to make sure that those that have the best knowledge and those that we need their input are at the table, meaning it is not a corporate boardroom of fossil fuel companies telling us how to fix climate change. I don't know about you, I don't think that that's a great idea. If they're the ones that could have, and you gotta watch that 3-part series because I really, really, really don't like ExxonMobil after that. I mean, I never liked them, but that's still the deal. on how they've known this and then have spent hundreds of millions of dollars delaying and duping the public. So that for years, it wasn't a #1 issue, right? And now we are sitting here as the clock's burning. Hopefully the Lord above us is, on our side here, because like, we're gonna need all the help we can get. We are so late to the game to get this done. And this bill, candidly, it will never see the light of day in the current General Assembly. Not in the House, and Representative Rabb introduced it prior to my arrival. That is how divisive Harrisburg has become.
I would even go further to say that, I know you said there were versions of this bill in the past, and they were prime sponsored by Republicans and had bipartisan support, and it still didn't move. It didn't go anywhere.
It was for that Republican that was in a moderate seat to try to stay in office, I'll be candid.
Oh,
It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
very,
Absolutely.
and it's like, and it's some of our Democrats do this, right? They're like, okay, we'll look like we're compromising, and maybe on some issues that's okay. But when it comes to public health harm, this one Earth, that's it. I know people are going to space, but like, this is all the one we got to, this is it. This is our mothership. And so unless there's some hidden plan to move to another one that we're not aware of, or I'm not aware of, why wouldn't you want to protect it? And to the point of this phase out will happen. There will be whether or not how long it takes of carbon capture is something that's embraced, which unfortunately the Biden administration seems to be embracing it, as is Pennsylvania. We will lock in another 10 to 15 years of fossil fuel with all the methane just spewing out while they say they capture carbon and then re-inject it into the earth.
So I have another piece I'd like to and it's a talking point of theirs that I'd like to dispute. So to give you guys a little bit of background, I'm an attorney with my master's in public health, and I never knew that in running for office my public health degree would be more important than my law degree, but it has become so crucial. And weirdly, when studying environmental health for my degree, I had a professor that actually talked about the fact that, and then put out there and essentially kind of denied climate change, talked about the fact that the Earth has historically been cyclical in rising and lowering of temperatures, and talked about the different ages and ice ages and things like that. And scientifically, yes, that is factually correct, and we know that we're going into a heating stage. We know that that's happening. The problem is with climate change is we are making that happen exponentially faster than it should be. And that's what we're trying to address. I think we all understand the science there that climate as a general statement, historically over the billions of years that it's been here, has gone up and down in temperature. And it's a cycle that happens. But it is happening at such an exponential rate that mankind, humans here on Earth, are destroying both the planet and the planet's future, our own future, the biodiversity that we have. Everything is at risk right now. It's not a question of whether or not the cycle's happening, it's how fast is it happening and why is it happening that fast? And it's happening that fast because of the coal and gas and oil industry.
And to set a goal to 100% by 2050, like it's not fast enough, but that's what ours is. It's like, this is completely doable. And, to know that Senator Yaw has said, and we have a clip of this, we should have brought it and put it to play, everybody, talking to himself basically in a committee meeting about, he's like, I just don't, the ice caps are melting. I don't know why they're melting, but they've been melting for years, so it really isn't a big deal. I sat there and I'm kind of like, just shut your mouth. And I'm kind of just staring at him in awe, and I'm like, but don't you get how all this, this man is not stupid. He's an attorney, he certainly knows how to invest his money to make more. What about this process? They refuse to acknowledge an iota of harm or negative, attributes affiliated with the current energy portfolio in Pennsylvania. Every bad bill that they put up, I try to amend with clean water, clean something, falls on party line vote, every amendment. But that's where I can get RDs that are, not 100% with us on 100% renewable energy, to get them to vote. I've never had one of our own colleagues vote against my amendments that try to do something good in the green space and the environmental space. But again, this isn't some unreasonable goal. And if we can build frac pads and pipelines, look at the infrastructure that has been built out in 10 years in Pennsylvania since the shale boom. I mean, it's bananas. And we couldn't do something like that for renewables in half the time. And so I think that's how we frame this, is that there is no stop something, hit the stop button, all fossil fuels in Pennsylvania are shutting down on whatever date. That's not in this legislation. This is a planned transition, which 30-some% of Pennsylvanians do rely on natural gas to turn the lights on. So but that's a third. That's not unreasonable. And if there weren't barriers, like I have a bill for community solar, it's never gonna move. I even lost my Republican co-sponsor from last session, so that shows you how. But that would allow local communities, whether if you have an HOA, whatever, to put solar up and be less of a burden on the energy grid. So in the current energy grid, that's PJM. It's in Lower Providence Township in Montgomery County. It's in my district, and they invited me right after I got elected. And I flew in all these high-profile people from PJM, and I'm like, I don't even know what PJM is. It's the electric. I had no clue. Very enlightening. They took the control rooms underground. It's the whole grid from many states. And I said, they showed me this pie chart of what keeps their goal. Sole reason for existing is to keep the grid on. Doesn't matter how. It's just consistency and power. That every time we need it, it's there. And so I'm looking at the pie chart, and I said, is that thing, I don't even call it a piece of pie, what renewable, because I'm squinting, I have worn glasses since kindergarten, I'm looking at their thing, that it was 2% or less of Pennsylvania's grid was powered by renewables. And I said, do you have any oomph or any interest in changing that? And they're cold, stone-faced. We don't deal with how, it's just keeping it on.
That's your job.
And so, but again, it might be their job, right? But how do we get that incentivized? And they don't like some of the solar projects that are home-based because they can't tell, they feel that shifts a little bit of the grid reliability. But until there is they have to adapt, right? If a new solar farm goes online, they're not protesting it, they just adapt the grid. So there is a way to do this, and this whole Ukraine thing, the things that we have heard, I mean, I'm ashamed for some of the people that we work with. We've been called, oh gosh, what? I don't even.
Essentially, we support Russia because we want to go to renewable energy somehow. I'm not totally,
So you're
the logic doesn't work for me.
It's
can't do that
the
to
literal abuse of it's using a humanitarian crisis to further corporate greed. And it's just I mean, I guess I should have expected it, but I mean, that was a talking point. They had to have all gotten a packet. They all had to have gotten something in that caucus for the Republicans. It was like they practiced it. And the war just had broke out. And you're like, oh my, how is that? And you're sitting there and it's and that's what we're up against.
And they rely on the fact that maybe not all of you understand the different forms of gases and what they're used for and how we extract them from the earth. Because we hear pretty regularly, well, if we wouldn't have stopped the pipeline, gas prices wouldn't be so high. The gas going through that pipeline has nothing to do with the gas that goes in your car, you guys. It's so terribly frustrating that they rely on, I don't want to call it the lack of understanding, which Katie and I will stand here and tell you, we didn't know these things before we started. There are plenty of things we are still learning, and they're relying on the fact that why would you look to know what was gonna go through that pipeline until now? And then you hear people that are supposed to be people that you trust telling you, oh, hey, your gas prices are high because we closed that the Democrats closed that pipeline. And this is someone you think you trust. They're in a position of authority, they seem knowledgeable, but they're lying to you. They are blatant, and they're relying on you not going through and figuring that out on your own like we've done.
And to the credit of all humans that have tried, it is not like the DEP's website or the Public Utility Commission website is like the most user-friendly thing. I mean, for God's sakes, like, if you don't know what the PA Bulletin is, we just put something out on social for everyone to sign up for it. It comes out every Friday, and full disclosure, I did not know what the heck the PA Bulletin was until I was a state senator, so there's no shame in not knowing what the PA Bulletin is, and I've lived here my whole darn life. So it is a notification system of all the state agencies, like proposed regulation changes, permits that are under review, permits that have been approved. So now every Friday we all, in my office, feverishly go through the Department of Environmental Protection's section of the PA Bulletin, because that is often where you see what's going on in the state. And it's, as a senator, I don't get an email that says, "Dear Senator Muth, these following projects have a permit application has been put in for your district," or "we're approving this in your district." When Energy Transfer Sunoco dumped 20-some thousand plus gallons of industrial waste drilling fluid into Marsh Creek Lake, and they first told us that it was only 8,000, I learned how to read drilling logs. I learned how, I was like, I think your math is off. They're missing 20-some thousand gallons from July, underground. So all this stuff that came out in the lake that's still being cleaned up today in a public drinking water source that they refuse to test for major contaminants and chemicals that are harmful to health. Like, that's the government? The government's supposed to protect you, and I think what I've learned is what you assume is in place is not. And that sounds really terrible, but it's the truth. And as residents and people that live here, you should be asking those questions, because they're not dumb questions. And we ask them all the time. I'm on month number 6 on a question to the DEP about how many people in Pennsylvania have a water treatment system in their home for their private well because of water contamination from industry. Month number 6. And they can't tell me. So I think we've had the excuse of 2 family emergencies. There's been turnover because they got rid of somebody who was terrible, thank goodness. But I'm like, you don't have a spreadsheet, you have water complaints. How do you not know this? How do you not know this is your job, right? And so when you realize that's how corrupted the government has become in terms of just doing the basic, we're not talking about a ban, we're talking about just having people have drinking water, which is required for life. There's nobody that gets an exemption from not needing drinking water. I mean, that's just fact. That's not no guy at the frat pad can live without clean drinking water. Exxon CEO, Cabot Gas and Oil, you all still need it. And they all have it, but not the people that have bared this burden. And they are not the cost of doing business. And that is what we hear, is that this is just a cost of doing business. And these are people's lives.
Nobody's health and safety, nobody's life is the cost of doing business, and if that, I've said this about gun violence, but I'll say about this too. If for you the cost of doing business is somebody's health and safety and life, then I question your morals. I question where your moral compass is, and I don't think you're a good human being. I'm not. Nobody's life is worth that. I'm sorry.
Especially after you're given all the information. Like, there are some senators, as I mentioned on Thursday, that I got to participate in the health harms of fracking, and they are pro-industry, and they were a little overwhelmed at that hearing, but Senator Brewster is one of our, we always say old guard, new guard, don't have to hate each other in our caucus. With time in there comes some wisdom, right? Institutional wisdom, and we're new and we have all this energy, and so those two combined are a force that really pushes the other side when we're in the minority. And so I knew that Senator Brewster, if you haven't read the book Amity and Prosperity, you should, but I buy it used on eBay from bookstores. And I just hand copies of them out to my colleagues, hoping someone will read it. Most of the men have gotten halfway through and then they say it's too sad. And I'm like, well, take a break and then continue on, because it's a true story and it's horrible. But Senator Brewster, I said, hey, I'm gonna have this hearing in your district. do you want to be my co-host? Which is what would normally happen. Usually members come to me and say, I want to have a policy hearing on whatever. And my job is to accommodate that. I don't get to pick the show. But this was my show. It just was going to be on where I was born, not representing anywhere. And he said yes. He could have said no, thanks for letting me know you're going to be in my district. He said yes, and some of the testifiers from different research places, one of the testifiers that was impacted is his constituent. It was a hard day for Senator Brewster, who has tried to have put some legislation in place. He's more worried about the steel industry in Pennsylvania, which is a fair concern. We should be manufacturing steel in America safely with controlled air emissions, but he had to kind of have that moment, right? And when you've been on the wrong side of something, or maybe he just doesn't know all the things. And again, it's not like the health impact study is sent out to members of the General Assembly. Like, it's just not. And I'm not saying that's an excuse, because we take the initiative to, there's a few handful of us that do read everything. There's 2 right here. And then we catch these things, right, in bills and legislation. And we want to have this renewable energy bill as a counter to all of the bad. It is a comparison to say that Pennsylvania doesn't have to be this way if you run this bill. Knowing that, it would really take everybody in these majority districts to put heat on their elected officials to get them to move it, let alone to come to the table on a basic conversation about something that they are controlling the outcome of, but yet it impacts all of us. And I think that's the hardest part of being a senator in the minority, is knowing that you have a podium and that's your power sometimes, but it's not enough to pass a bill. It doesn't save lives. It might change a few hearts and minds, but not enough to get 5 votes on the other side to do anything. It's incredibly overwhelming. If we want to go into Q&A?
Yeah, let's go into Q&A. I think we've rambled on
Yeah,
enough.
we have. We're just telling you all the things. So if you want to do questions, should we hand a mic, Kay? Oh, Kay's the hero. She's the mic.
Any questions?
Sure.
I think this is on.
Hi there. Oh, okay.
Take your seat.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Hi, Jim Bear from Potsdam. One thing, aside from a whole slew, you mentioned when you talk about the cost of doing business, at least part of this in dealing with the industry is something that Pennsylvania has just sort of put off to ignore. This isn't a pure focus on the 100, and there are some people in that movement who don't like it. But Texas is a model in a lot of ways for the fuels business. And the fact that we're not taxing, at least to some degree, people in Texas think are crazy. Oh, they'll take it someplace else. What do you mean? It's in the ground. Nobody makes a well decision based on a 3 or 5% tax. And the people who should be most interested in taxing it are the leaseholders. Because in Texas, if there is a lie about what's coming out of the ground and how much is spent, it's tax fraud. So you get the whole tax system backing up honesty in dealing with the leaseholders. In Pennsylvania, people have been made great promises and then they get checks for $2.38. How did this happen? Well, don't worry, we're keeping the books and nobody's looking at them. So at least that way forces an accounting of what are the numbers that you can begin looking at. And let's make sure they're honest numbers and then try to do a better job of, and this is where even a lot of Penn State's work has gone, saying, well, our studies don't include the parameters of fugitive gases. We're only counting what's actually in the pipes that we're measuring. We're not counting all the other stuff. But the point being, the cost of doing business is at least a place to start, that we should have numbers about what's going on with that industry.
And I used to be one that was like, no extraction tax, because we should just transition off of this, like initially when I, got in the legislature, because I didn't want that to prolong, right? And so I'm not caving on this issue, it's just the realistic landscape of where I live and work. It's not going to go away in 5 years. I hope that we're on a steady transition away in the next 10 years. It makes me cringe to say that out loud. It's probably the first time I've ever said it out loud. Unless there's some massive lawsuit that just pauses everything, which would be amazing. But to your point, it's like Pennsylvania just got like royally screwed, and I hate to say it like that, but like the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been left on the table because we did not have an extraction tax. And that was actually one of Senator Brewster's initiatives, and he was saying to these impacted residents, and their counter was, but you still support industry, and the absence of, enforced regulations of the ones that exist. And Texas actually has better regulations than Pennsylvania, so let's just state that for the record. And now the tax fraud thing, I didn't know about that piece that you just mentioned, so thank you for bringing that up, because.
And it's online.
Well,
You
and.
can look up individual wells in Texas.
You can look up some in Pennsylvania, not the leases. The leases are all covered by NDAs in Pennsylvania, and Senator Jean Yaw, who gets royalties. And I think you bring up a really important point that kind of ties into this whole myth of you're paying more because we shut down pipelines. These farmers and people that have infrastructure on their land, they don't make a dime more when that company's profits goes up. That amount is set, the royalty amount is set in their lease. And they already they got really screwed over on that. That's not, the Farmer Association they really want that piece changed, because there's no transparency on how they report what's extracted, because they don't report the two volume and, not weight, it might be weight. Depending on the type of gas, that can fluctuate, so the actual amount of gas that's being extracted, the landowner essentially has no way of knowing unless they get those two metrics. Senator Yaw had a bill, because Mr. Royalties himself, to fix part of that. And so I'm reading his bill, and it says may for the two types, not shall or and, right? You need both of those metrics. So I really was kind of second guessing myself, because I'm like, why would Jean Yaw? This would benefit him if he knew how much was coming out. Like, what, what I'm thinking here? And so I kept reading it, and I'm like feverishly reading these over, because the next day it was going to run. If I was going to amend this bill, or try to, I'm reading these blogs from farmers. Like, I'm trying to make sure that this one word change still doesn't guarantee you knowing. And I try to amend it just to change the one word, and he was like, no. So I'm like, so you right there show that your loyalty lies with industry, because you are invested in them stock-wise, right? Knowing you make way more money than what you get on royalties yourself. But you just screwed over every other person in Pennsylvania that has a lease by not requiring that both are reported. To your point, I mean, it's people's livestock. I've been sent the most horrific pictures of animals that have been killed from water contamination. Their entire farms have been ruined. Their livelihood down the toilet. So you might have made whatever on signing that initial lease, and there are some families who have made a lot of money. And I say some, and it's a small fraction. The rest, to your point, I think the one landowner I speak with who still hasn't had water for 11 years, she gets $300 a month to go, which helps goes and buys bottled water. But, in a plastic bottle from the plastics industry. But to your point, we don't even, if we were taxing that now, if we said, hey, we're putting on the extraction tax, and that was used to fund a transition and to clean up all this crap, because we're not gonna, like I said, that bonding issue is gonna come back and bite us. It already is with all these unplugged wells from the conventional gas. There's a whole federal initiative to plug these uncapped wells. And right now they want to plug them in areas on federal lands instead of starting in impacted communities where people live and are already next to other gas and oil infrastructure, have health problems out the wazoo. So to your point, I'm for if the tax is going to be used to get Pennsylvania out of the contaminated state that it's in and fund a transition, sign me up. Unfortunately, the majority party who wrote Act 13, the Oil and Gas Act, didn't put it in there, and no one's ever been able to put it up for a vote, let alone since that wasn't included in Act 13. And you're right. I'm not saying I think people in Texas are all healthy. like, I won't go that far, because I think they have a lot of health issues, but at the same rate, I agree with you that they've done things differently in terms
A lot
of.
of problems. My wife is from Texas, so that's where we've got family members who
Got it.
are in the business. And there are some.
But they came up to Pennsylvania, these Texas operators, and made us the Wild West.
Right. And anything that you can sort of send out and provide for a local actionable level as more municipalities are looking at RF 100s and changing it to Go 100 PA is probably a better brand than Sierra Club for a lot of our local municipalities.
And we can have this sent out, it's from Penn Environment, who helped us draft the bill language. They didn't write it, we had our input too, and making sure things were in it, but they have an action packet that we can have sent out, so everyone can have that too.
And I just want to pull out to a little bit more of a macro level than the micro level of the individuals who own the land and talk about municipalities, because right now when they open wells or they dig wells, municipalities can get an impact fee.
That we don't know where it goes.
But there are municipalities who relied far too heavily on an impact fee for their budget and are now bankrupt. And that's a problem. And that goes back to this idea of where these taxes are, like why didn't we do it this way? We chose impact fees and allowing people to have these, you know.
And not only
independent
that,
leases.
those impact fees, we get a list once a year. It says, what projects in your district do you want to fund? And I think it's a grant program, I think, for wastewater. It's something like local municipal grants that they need to repair and upgrade things. That's funded by the impact fee. So we're using, we're letting a lot of these municipal sewer authorities take frac waste. They're destroyed, the system is destroyed. They have to replace it because the chemicals in it are far different than just sewage, right? And so these impact fees also aren't audited. So all of that money, like if I were to email, it's more so the ones that actually have industry, they get more of an impact fee, but it doesn't go to the impacted families or the people living in those communities to help them if they have been negatively impacted by industry. It doesn't go to air monitor installations or water quality testing. None of that is mandated. None of it is required. And so those are the missing things. Whereas local municipalities, thank heaven, some of them now, they've won successfully in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, using when a new company comes in and says they want infrastructure in, using the harms that have already occurred to an adjacent municipality or a nearby one as a rationale for denying the request for a permit. Because what the gas companies will do is sue the heck out of the municipality, and the municipality will freak out that they're gonna be sued, because that's a lot of money in legal fees, and these billion-dollar corporations are no shortage of big-time lawyers for them, right? And so the underdog race is there. Should you concede or should you fight it? And now we're seeing that there has been success just at the basic level of using those recent court rulings, which is a ray of hope, because if you know what the Beaver County ethane cracker plant, it's called, if you hear it, first time I was like, what the heck is a cracker plant? And I really thought it was like a Ritz cracker plant, I admit it. They crack molecules of ethane and methane, and it's this, Google it, Beaver County cracker plant. It is this massive spread of just emissions. It's right on the Ohio River. Little tiny plastic beads are being discharged into the Ohio River. But that was one of the things that came up there when there were residents trying to fight. Part of that, it went in, and the one that's overseas, I think in the Netherlands, same type of plant, has different technology that actually captures more air emissions. In Pennsylvania, didn't make Shell is the gas company, put those in here in Pennsylvania. So again, not that I'm saying I'm supportive of the Netherlands Shell cracker plant, but I'm saying that here they could have done the same thing and they didn't, right? And so now that cracker plant needs 900 new permits in Allegheny County alone to be profitable in all those local communities. So I think it was actually Thursday or Friday, the city council for Allegheny County was voting on allowing fracking in their parks. Or debating it, I don't know if there was a vote. Go ahead, next question. Sorry, Kay.
That's okay.
Kay's giving me the eye. No, I'm just kidding.
Hi, can you summarize what you're hoping we can do to help change some of the circumstances, especially considering midterm elections coming up or local elections?
Well, there's a couple of things, like Patricia Rooney is great at letters to the editor. Say that, I've seen many, so that is helpful because people communicate and read on different levels, right? Like, some people are on Facebook, some people are, like, whatever all of you can do in your most comfortable way is, and we're uncomfortable if you have these conversations, whether it's your neighbor, your family, whatever, is just to bring to light some of these things in basic conversations. So letters to the editor about Pennsylvania's need to transition, the more papers that's published in, and some of them, can get published across the state. I know some of the stuff has gone the whole way out to Western PA in the Tribune Review and things like that, because my dad tells me. But whatever you guys can take on in terms of just saying, hey, this is something Pennsylvania needs to move on now, would be helpful. We also, we have a website for our Go 100. Do you know what?
Go100pa.com.
Yeah.
That's go, G-O, the number 100pa.com, I believe is what it is.
And we've been using Go 100, hashtag Go 100PA is our thing, but anything you post on social, even if it's an article just related to what we were talking about, or if you go and watch those 3-part, like I plan to post this week, like, hey, I listened to these 3 documentary, episodes, which again doesn't go into the public health part at all, which I wish they would have layered that in, but it still really shows you the failure of government, because some people, again, assume that some of this stuff is being taken care of, and it is really a campaign of public awareness. I always try to remind myself, I didn't know all this stuff before I was a senator, like, don't get stuck in our bubble, because it's not everybody's against this idea, it's just that they just don't know. So we have that website that you can go onto and direct people to, which is just discusses this legislation. And we also had a webinar that is on that website as well, that we did in February that people can watch the recording of if they want, like, another Representative Rabb and Penn Environment are involved, so there's that. And I think when we say, like, how do you get people to lead in, like, sometimes I'll use this example, it's completely unrelated, but January 2019, a woman walked into my office in the Capitol one of my first session weeks and said, could I talk to you for a moment, Senator Muth? It was like 5:30. I was like, sure. She's like, I'm a lobbyist for whatever nonprofit. We're trying to end child marriage in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not kidding. Like, I was like, is this lady messing with me? Like, is this like, because I'm new and stuff, like, what is, and she then explained that she was a victim of child marriage. I sat there, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, I've lived here my whole life and had no clue that we have the same, or lack of, we have the same laws as, like, Dubai, what's the, oh gosh, it's in South Asia, that has the same, where these happens where we think we're watching it, like, in another country, and here in Pennsylvania. So I'm like, what in the heck? So thankfully, I think about a year later, finally, Pennsylvania ended child marriage, except parents can still write a note and say that it's allowed. But again, better than what it was. But those are the kind of things where you're like, you can't stop listening, whether you like the issue or not, right? So how do you get that same kind of drawl in? We just say, I don't know, do you know, like, how long have you lived in Pennsylvania, whether it's your whole life or you're talking to someone who moved here, right? You can still say, this state is a linchpin in the climate crisis continuing, and it needs to change. Pennsylvania has an opportunity to be a leader in renewables, but that's not happening. And then people are gonna be like, what? Pennsylvania is like, and then you just go into it, right? That we are one of the biggest polluters in the whole world.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is like top 10, I forgot the exact top 3 polluters of greenhouse gases in the world. Like, not like the nation.
We trade off with China, so 2 or 3, but just,
yeah. And then I'll take a moment for, like, a civics lesson. Vote. Know who you're voting for. know who's on the ballot, and know that you have the opportunity to vote every 6 months in Pennsylvania. We have an election cycle every year. We just had a primary, we'll have a general, and then we'll have another primary again in May of 2023 with another general in November of 2023.
I want to put up a billboard that says, "In every 6 months in Pennsylvania, every year we vote." Because people don't, they're like, I said that the other day to these, at the Norriston, we had a student testifying group, it was an amazing event. And I'm like, in Pennsylvania, every 6 months you can vote, and the one kid was like, no way, I'm like, yeah. So again, those local elections, every 6 months in Pennsylvania, no matter what year it is. So your local government has a role in this, right? So you wanna ask those local people, like, it's, of course, we all sometimes like to check the box next to the party we're affiliated with, understandable, but we just told you right now, we're not gonna shy away from being hard on our own.
Yeah.
Just because they're a D doesn't mean they're gonna uphold those same standards. So putting the heat, if I want your vote, you should be able to ask me questions, right? And that person should be accessible. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I talk about turnout a lot, and one of the things is not just there's an election, but everybody votes. If you go to the polls or not, you voted. If you sat on your couch, you gave a vote that says, I don't care what you do with my money.
Which means the status quo stays in place when people
If you
don't
want
vote.
to say, there's nobody worth voting for, every election when we tally votes, there are votes for Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Go and actively say, you're not worth none of you are worth my vote. They will look at that in turnout, they'll look at what's the turnout in this area, and how many undervotes. Why are there people showing up and they're not voting for us?
I mean,
That's
I
how you
candidly
get
did the
people to
same
come
thing
and
in
talk.
my own primary, which I had no clue. I was like, who wrote someone else in? So we do look at, it's a fair statement to say.
Again, being in Pottstown, that's one of those areas which suffers from very low turnout. So I'm passionate about turnout. Just say something.
Yes, absolutely, and when we talk about local government's role, the other thing is, as we continue to try to get this type of legislation passed at the state level, your local communities can commit to doing this and pass resolutions and have work groups and already commit themselves to making this happen. And I know in my township where I live, they have been doing rebuilds on the township building, and in doing that, they looked at ways to have green energy incorporated into that. I have an environmental organization, like educational center, that wants to rebuild or renovate their one barn because it uses a lot of dirty energy, and in doing that, they're looking at geothermal energy to bring into to help light up their barn and have electricity there. There are a lot of ways that locally this can matter. So, those local elections, talk to the people who are running and make sure you bring these questions up, because if they weren't thinking about it before, you're making them think about it now.
And I think Sam, the little guy, was still here. I don't know.
He took a break.
He took a break. So I bring Sam up because his Boy Scout troop came to my office in 2019, and I will say, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, the younger they are so environmentally aware. I wish I could just take them all and put them in Harrisburg. They are like, Senator Muth, why aren't we doing a better recycling program? And I they're just full, I'm like, and I was a Girl Scout, so I can attest. That's how I learned to identify skunk cabbage and take care of streams and ponds and things, totally get it. And yesterday I gave out Boy Scout, Eagle Scout awards. All of their projects were conservation, streams, clean. I was like, thank you. I'm like, you should all come and work for the DEP and DCED, because I say that though, at the school board level, in the curriculum space, are kids learning about this in school? Science, it doesn't mean we have to have a green tree hugging course. I'm saying, is their curriculum showing the climate crisis and what, and I think naturally most of this generation coming up here has gotten aware of it, which is thank heavens, because, they're being failed right now, they can't vote. So I think that's another local government example, is like, who's going to be on a school board to decide, these really important things. And if they're gonna build a new school, don't you wanna see solar on the top of it? We shouldn't be building a darn thing. new in every renovation, but there's not a single grant in the state of Pennsylvania specifically for renewable energy. And that to me is bananas. Like, I begged my one fire department to put it on their new thing. I was like, please just set the example, you know, like, and it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle.
Is nuclear energy part of renewable process?
Well, I mean, so, go ahead.
Technically, no. It's definitely a low carbon emission energy, but because of its tie to radioactive wastes, we don't include it, and it's not something that is inherently renewable in and of itself. Could it be part of the transition? Certainly. It could be, there are things that could be part of that transition that pull us off of the really dirty things, but it can't be something we rely on inherently long-term. And when I say long-term, I'm talking like hundreds of years, because I want to change what this planet looks like and that we're gonna be here that long.
Well, the waste thing is like, again, every form of energy has waste. Gina tells me all the time, Winnie, that there are
But not
buried wind
radioactive
blades
waste.
contaminating the soil and solar panel batteries contaminating everything, but the man will not admit to an iota of frac waste. It freaking kills me. It kills me. I even Googled whether or not, I was like, is he really telling me? Maybe I don't know about these buried wind turbines. Like, here's me, like, trying to, like, give the guy benefit of the doubt. Nuclear waste, and I have Limerick in my district, gone on the tour, very fascinating. Like, the waste part, they show us where the spent rods are, right? From cooling pool to the concrete thing. If you think about the atmosphere as a whole and the amount of emissions that go up into it from other sources of all these dirty sources of energy and climate change, I'm sitting there thinking, like, is a concrete, you know, looks like a cemetery type of thing, is like, that's how it's in, you could fly a plane into the thing and they're not gonna move. Like, is that so bad compared to, right? Like, so I like to think about the amount of waste and how long, like, is it gonna leach into anything and harm, right? And so that's how I've started to think about energy, and that there is, you know, we want, hopefully someday there's zero waste, but with nuclear, in other countries, they recycle their nuclear spent fuel rods. The United States of America banned that. So they do not have, we cannot recycle our nuclear waste in America. So it goes out to Utah typically, and it's buried. So does some fracking waste, I've learned, is taken out to Utah, because that's how hot it is, because there's low level radioactive waste and high level. So, and the amount from fracking is far greater than the nuclear plants. I forget how many are left in Pennsylvania now, 5? I think 5. But, you know, they want to bail out because it is expensive. But it's expensive, and this is just my 2 cents, is that it's very highly regulated. And I say that when I went on the tour, at a certain point, you get scrubbed in. They look for a fleck of anything on you before you leave. And so there's all these regulations federally they have to comply with, even for discharge of the water, all this stuff. We can debate setbacks. I don't know why they're building a new neighborhood right next to Limerick. No freaking comment. But I really don't. My husband just, I'm like, wait, they're building what there? Like, I'm like, but I digress. But so I think that is part of I know for us, we can't really say it's renewable because we don't recycle it. Now, if that should change, because there are some models, just so you know, you may start reading about these small nuclear, you know, mini plants or whatever they're called.
Well, I came to this area to work as a construction engineer on that power plant just over the hill. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in preventing further problems. But I've been doing a lot of reading over the last several years since I've retired, and I know that the whole problem of wastewater and the environmental problems you've been discussing have to be taken care of first, because they will kill us first. Then, when those problems get at least under some level of control, then we can start working about cleaning up, possibly recycling nuclear material as well. And actually, nobody right now is eager to build a nuclear power plant.
No, and that's to your point.
They are frightfully, they're terribly expensive. A plant I spent some time with on the California coast, cleaning up messes that had been made by the electric company in trying to do the job without bringing in any outside engineers. They're talking now about possibly closing up that big plant because, among other problems, earthquake faults have been discovered in the immediate vicinity of that plant that nobody knew about in advance. And part of the work had to be redone, everything had to be recalculated because the expensive foreign engineering company that they brought in to study the matter screwed the things up royally and got their directions of everything all sideways. That we had to redo the work of that expensive foreign company to get the plant rolling again, get things moving again. So,
And part of that is because the regulations they need to meet to operate like a nuclear plant,
yes.
they're very stringent, right? You have to meet these standards, where in the fracking industry, they are exempt from every federal and state law for waste disposal, whereas
Yeah.
a nuclear plant is not. And
Which is
there
a-
also is no
yeah.
requirement for skilled workers at each frac
Yes,
pad, so it could be,
leaving
yeah.
that industry improperly regulated is that's sure lunacy.
And they were allowing waste that is of nuclear waste level from
Yes.
a nuclear plant to be discharged into what, I mean, I hate to break to everybody that in the industry, soil, you contaminate it, that's where we grow our food. Like, this is in our food chain. Cows are drinking out of streams where frac water is discharged into it. That's in our food chain. So like, again, no one is safe. There's all this exemption for industry, but we're not exempt from the harm. And I think that's one of the messages I try to explain to people. It's not an this energy versus this energy debate. It's that this industry is the only one that enjoys these exemptions. If you're so safe, why do you need the exemptions to operate? Right? And they've made the fact, I mean, it started with Halliburton and Dick Cheney. Then go down to the state level. We don't, hazardous waste loophole laws are for the gas and oil industry. I have 3 bills for that too, but I can send that information.
I've lived in the West, and I look at the Colorado River.
It's a mess.
The problem there is that river is drying up because water is being taken out upstream for so many different purposes that the river no longer reaches the ocean.
And you bring up a good point I didn't mention. Fracking, for one well pad, takes over 1 million gallons of clean water. So these companies can pull up to a fill-up point at any of the Commonwealth waterways, any of our protected, constitutionally protected, it's our public asset, it's the public's asset, can draw clean water for like 5 cents. It's literally, we have another bill for that to increase the water fee. Take it and go frack with it, and it's destroyed. It cannot be cleaned. It cannot, as of technology now, I should say, I guess, it cannot be cleaned. So they're using our water. So what happens when the water is gone, and then we have all these climate conditions that are changing, from droughts to flood, all of these things, right? This is all interconnected. And again, they're not paying their share fair share at all, and they're taking from us and harming us. And I think that's, again, we understand there's gonna be a market. We're not gonna become, no more capital, nothing like that. It's just that this is not a market that's sustainable. It has tremendous risks the bankruptcy levels they're able to get away with, and leave their liability for cleanup behind. There's no law preventing them from leaving a mess again in Pennsylvania, just like the coal industry.
We have another question right
Hi, Bill Savy. I'm actually been part of Ready for 100 in Montgomery County for 4 years. We have 17 local municipalities that have committed to a clean energy resolution, clean energy.
What county are you in?
I'm in Plymouth Meeting.
Okay.
And Mendes, yes, I was on her Environment and Climate call this week. So anyway, we have 17, we have 18 coming up this summer. Lord Gwynn is going to join us, so that's almost, we're getting up
Senator Colette's, yeah.
up to 20, and we'd like to get more in Montgomery County. So that's something we can do locally as citizens. We can go to our local municipalities, ask our officials to make a commitment to transition to clean renewable energy. So that's one action we can take. But what I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing here is also, I heard recently, education. People are not aware. They said that the average U.S. citizen who's not like us, who are all environmentalists, does not hear about climate change or does not discuss it with anyone maybe about 1 or 2 times a year. So what I see with you guys doing is if you could do a road show, I don't know how many more capacity, how many more of these events you can do, but if you could get out and engage with us and actually help people understand the importance of this, I think it would really be critical. There should be some way to get across the state. I don't know whether there could be a film crew that could follow you.
Or even just like in local religion, I mean, there's a lot of clergy across all religious affiliations that have come together on this issue. So to your point, it is the best way is us like, hopefully have a good president like yours and lets us in after Sunday service and we feed everybody and say, hey, listen to us for 45 minutes.
So what I see something on a lot higher level, yes, we can do it locally, and I'm frustrated on how slow it's going in Montgomery County to reach all of our localities. You as state reps, or state senators, sorry, you have a little bit more visibility across the state. And if somebody could follow you and document your story, if you could do a half-hour video on this pitch to get Pennsylvania to transition, and we could all make it go viral.
Garrett works for me, he's sitting behind you. I'm thinking of a policy hearing tour, climate change tour, climate crisis tour. We could jazz that up to make it sound.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, and just, we could, yeah, there we go. Look at Garrett's like, God help me, we're going back to Western PA. No, that's actually a really good idea, because then we could have even just some of the dialogue in the Q&A part of the video. Thank you.
Hey, anybody
Tell
else?
people to vote.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Over here, Alan?
Well, thank you very much for coming here, and it was a very, very good presentation, and I really admire your efforts to take on this very important problem of climate change and this very difficult political problem of getting action done. Okay, so we're here for Go 100, and you had said that there's really no chance for Go 100 to proceed in the legislature. And that's because it's a political problem. So I think it's good for us to pursue the Go 100 goal, but picking up on what some other people said, like the pay to play, for example, seems like central to dealing with this problem.
100%.
Okay.
And
so-
people will say like term limits. I'm like, term limits, nothing.
No, I don't want to.
Pay to play is if you don't term limit somebody and then the next guy or gal, whoever, whatever gender is bought and paid for by industry, any industry. I'm not just saying fossil fuel. We have a huge problem with the insurance industry as well. But this, to your point, it's not going to end until we make that an issue. And I think until the campaign finance laws can change, how do you make it an issue? Is that every senator and state rep has to submit a statement of financial interest every session. You have to list what your debts and investments are. So that's how I looked at Gene Yaws and I'm like, holy Moses, he has Halliburton on that. I about fell out of my chair. And others, but Halliburton just really made me mad. But to say you're bought and paid for, you have to put, the public doesn't know that piece as well. And I think you're right, in the absence of having the votes to bring this up to, to a committee or to get it moved.
I don't like to say this, but I'm questioning whether our energy should be focused on a legislation of this nature, or rather pay to play, changing Harrisburg's rules of bringing up bills, of fighting to.
Can we do both at the same time? Because that's sort of where my head's at, because if we table, and I don't disagree with your thought process at all, I think maybe we should have a companion bill that says specific, just to draw to, I'd love to do campaign finance laws far more broader, but to the fossil fuel piece, something that just draws attention to the fact that Pennsylvania, between investments and pay to play from their own personal gain, those two things are gridlocking us where we are now. You're absolutely right.
And the other thing is, this is the last thing. I think, and I don't know how to do this, but we need to have a process or a campaign to deal with the elections, not in this district, but in the districts that are voting for the representatives and senators who are in the majority. And how do we influence those elections? I think I assume you're going to win again. I think both of you.
Knock on wood, I hope you're
I
right.
think both of you.
But the fossil fuel industry is very powerful, so when you look to see who's running against me, know that they will put up a lot of money to knock out people like me, because of events like this. If these type of events don't occur, this is a very big threat to them, so acknowledge your power as you sit in this room, because now you can go share knowledge.
So what the gentleman said there, a road show in districts where
solar powered
where it makes a difference. We're all, most of us more or less agree with you.
Sure.
And I prepared a series of questions which challenge little pieces of your legislation.
Oh, send them to us. We love to. We like that.
We read the whole bill.
They're trivial compared. I got rid of all of them because they're trivial compared to the issues that you raised in this. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a consensus. We're going on the road.
Any other? Thank you very much. We have snacks out on the north lawn, so you can get there just by going north and make a left if you go out this door, and I can sort of lead the way. Mike, come on out. I think things are out there. We're going to check on that. But please come and have a nice chat.